what's up guys? Jerome here from the Bonsai Supply and welcome to today's video. I have a Pyracantha in the studio with me today, which is a scientific name. It is commonly known as the Firethorn, and it is from the rose family, which means it is in the same family as the apple trees, cherry, plum, quince, hawthorn, and 4,800 more species. Now this particular tree flowers in spring and it produces beautiful white flowers, and then in the fall it produces tiny berries that can either be orange, red, or in some cases even white. Now this tree is native to Europe as well as Asia, and it is an evergreen shrub. Alright, so since this is an evergreen shrub, it will never lose all of the leaves in the fall, but as you can see, some leaves are turning yellow, which the tree will shed off and then just reproduce new leaves, but it will never lose all the leaves at the same time. One thing that's very important to note on most of the rose species, especially the Pyracantha, is that it only flowers and fruits on branches that are at least 1 year old. Now the Pyracantha, it can grow in a hardiness range zone from all the way from 6 to 9, and it is an extremely fast grower, and it is a very tough tree. So you can make extremely hard cuts and you do not have to worry a lot about this. This is a very good beginner tree at the same time as well. Now this Pyracantha that I have here today is quite on the larger side. You usually see them more as smaller bonsai trees. However, this one is quite large and it looks very interesting, but however there is a problem, or maybe there's an opportunity to improve this tree. And this opportunity is on this side. So as you see, this tree has a huge scar here in the center. And now there's a couple different ways that you can approach something like that. You can either embrace it and show it off and make this part of the display, where you take a big scar and you make it even bigger. So you take a Dremel and you make this section even bigger. However, I always find that when you have a large opening in the front of the trunk, I always feel like that it is very distracting from the overall tree and the overall display. So since I have this hole, I had an idea. Why don't we take a rock, carve out this section to match the rock, and then just add in this rock into this hole, and then change the angle where the rock becomes part of the display but is not the front like this hole. It would be more of a side view and just adds more of an interesting display versus having to see such a large hole in the front. Alright, so the first thing that we're going to do is take this tree out of this container so that we can properly fit this rock into the hole and then attach it with wire. And we're going to have to remove some of these roots so that the rock can perfectly and snug fit into this hole. So we first, after we select the roots and do the trial fitting, we then have to carve out the section to match the form of the rock so that it can perfectly fuse together. And in a few years down the road, you would never be able to see that I have done this manually or that it was man-made. It kind of looks like, it will look then like a root over rock where the tree is fusing together with the rock. And then once that's all done, we're going to go ahead and give this tree its very first styling. So let's get to work. Alright, so when you do this, the most important thing is that the rock really fits snugly in here. Snugly, is that even a word?
Probably not. But
okay, make sure that it fits in here very snug, like you can see on this side. So when this starts to roll over and start to fuse with the rock, it's going to look a lot cooler than if you have like a really large gap in between. I think I really like the way this is sitting in here. So now the only thing we have to do is make sure it looks the same from this side. Alright, so once I combed out the roots on top here, that gave me the idea of how I wanted to set this rock into the tree here. And then I started to kind of almost like trace it so that the rock perfectly fits. Now from this angle here, it looks like a perfect marriage. However, from the back here, there's a few gaps in here. And so in order for the bark here to roll over and start to become one with the rock, I have to fill these gaps. And so for that, I'm going to use a fix-it stick, which is basically a little putty like that you have to mix together well. And this is kind of like my go-to thing that I use for bonsai. And I can use this putty here to fill in these holes, and then this will become hard like concrete, and then the bark can roll over this to attach itself to the rock. Alright, so as you can see now with this fix-it stick, I was able to bridge the gap of the tree and the rock, and now the tree actually has a surface to roll over and then get to the rock. Without this gap, without that bridge that would bridge the gap, the tree would not be able to roll over as nicely. And so now this helps for that, but also since gets very hard, it will also help me to attach the rock to the tree. And so I think the front of the tree should be somewhere right in here, where you can still see, all of these roots here, the surface roots. You can see the movement of the rock, but also the branching here. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to put this tree back into the pot, and then we're going to start styling. And exactly for this reason, I chose a species that's very aggressively growing versus something that doesn't grow as aggressively. In order for the rock to attach to the tree, it would take about 3 or 4 times as long. But I would say that this tree attaches to this rock in about 2 years' time. So it happens very, very quickly. Alright, so here's a little trick when you work with trees that have a lot of thorns. Like this tree is extremely evil. It has these really tiny thorns that are hiding on the leaves and between branches, and I know I'm not going to get them all. So an easy trick to solve this in order not to get pinched is to leave a little slack of wire at the end of the branch. And so when I go ahead and place this branch, I just hold the base and then take this section and then look at this. See, now I can easily put a lot of movement in here and then just hold the sections that have been bent and place the branch into place. Alright, so this is the final styling of the very first styling this tree has ever had. And I did not mention that this tree came out of the ground earlier this year. So it's just been in this pot for 1 year and grew all of these roots. And so the first thing that we did here today is we looked at the surface roots, which will then determine what the front is of this future tree. And then we carved the center here that had such a big ugly hole and carved that to fit the rock perfectly. Then we used that fix-it stick to bridge the gaps in between the tree and the rock so that the tree can smoothly roll over and start to attach to the rock. Once we started wiring and placing the branches, the bottom branches we kind of left them undisturbed so that they can continue to grow and thicken in the spring. However, on the top we trimmed everything back to get finer ramification, except for this branch right here. This is our sacrifice branch, which we will allow to freely grow for the entire next year so that we get a nicer top here in the future. In the spring, we're going to repot this tree already into a bonsai container because this tree can take it. You saw all of these fibrous roots that the tree had, so I definitely know it is ready for the next step. And then we're just going to keep working on the branches and just allow for the tree to attach itself to the rock, which in my guesstimation is going to take around 2 years. Now, Pyracanthas are evil trees. They have a lot of thorns, so I already named this tree. I named this tree the Game of Thorns. I thought it was pretty fitting for this tree. So this is pretty much it for today, guys. If you have any questions, always comment below in the comment section. Make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, and I will catch you guys next time.